Today we're just going to have a little look around perhaps a third of the kit that Luke and I are going to take on our Atlantic road departing on the 2nd of December. We'll start off, strangely enough, with our emergency grab bag. If you just come on over here. This is what we'll be keeping on deck along with our life raft. This is pretty much everything that we need to survive for perhaps up to a week floating at sea. So, all of this is so it's completely waterproof. Obvious stuff like a sponge for cleaning. Then we've got seasickness tablets, because as you can imagine, being on a life raft is even more bumpy than being on an ocean rowing boat, even though that's difficult to imagine. Pee bottle, because we're advised not to stand overboard and do you know what, because that's very dangerous. Another of those. Then we have some flares, which, as you can imagine, are a crucial piece of kit when it comes to making yourself known to emergency and rescue services. And then pretty much stuff to survive: high-calorie dairy milk chocolate, pseudo cream. This is a personal locator beacon. We have an EPIRB on the boat which does something very similar, but this will basically send a satellite signal to Falmouth Coast Guard, and they'll know exactly where we are in the ocean, hopefully be able to coordinate our rescue. If we move on now to a different piece of kit, let's have a look at Jim's personal kit bag. Spooky Luke's got one of these as well. This should be the stuff that I should access daily. A water bottle, a tremendously unflattering cap, which the race rules actually require us to have a neck flap, something similar like that. I can tell you I'll be taking those off for the photos. Then we have headphones, waterproof, completely necessary as we'll be getting wet a lot of the time. Pee bottle again, these things are crucial. Let's see what else. So we got anything of extreme interest in here. Key, absolutely key. These are rowing pads for our knuckles and our hands, because they'll be under an extreme amount of stress every day. We'll be on the oars perhaps 15 hours each. These are going to be completely necessary for making sure that any of the callus we get and cuts are kept relatively comfortable whilst we're on the row. And then this, every endurance athlete's best mate, Vaseline. We'll be putting this in between our legs, under our armpits, basically anywhere where chafing is common. And then I'm just going to show you a satellite phone, which is a pretty cool piece of kit. The cool thing about a satellite phone, as you can imagine, is you do not need to be in range of a mobile phone signal. This is an Iridium, and we're able to contact the race organisers' boats, or the race officers, or anyone anywhere in the world really with this. We'll be putting in a call perhaps once a day between 12 and 1300 hours to the boat which is monitoring us, and then we'll get our weather reports via this. This is also what we'll hopefully take with the grab bag when we're jumping onto the life raft, so we can get some contact to the outside world. This thing here is a dagger board. This is for when we've got high seas and a wind coming across us. So this is going to enable us to keep our course, our rudder, various medical bags containing dressings, bandages, splints, swabs. I mean, the amount of antibiotics we're taking on a row like this could fuel a small hospital. It's really quite incredible what we have to take. And then the dreaded and beloved humorous bucket. This is where we'll be going to the loo. Usually once, twice a day. They say that relieving yourself actually turns into clockwork, just because of the food we take on board is powdered. It's very much the same. Nothing will give our, fingers crossed, stomachs any problems. So, and this is where we go to the loo. 1 inch of water, squat down and then toss it over. And perhaps lastly, I'll show you our foghorn. This, along with white flares, specifically not red because that's stress, will be two of the items that we use to make sure that any big container ships make sure that they know that we are there, because we actually come up as debris on their satellite system. So making ourselves known will be absolutely key. And that's a pretty brief overview of a lot of the kit that we have to take on our row. Guys, welcome to a typical ocean rowing boat. It is 23 foot long, 6 foot wide. It's made of fiberglass and carbon fiber with very buoyant sponge in between. It's actually a very strong build because it was built for someone for the North Atlantic. I'm just going to give you a quick whiz around it. This actually is where our main sponsor, We See, is going to go. We'd like to say a big thank you to Angie Lopez there. If we just carry on moving around, this is our rudder. It's not actually in place at the moment, but it sits like here, and the auto helm will steer it. It's actually locked in, but it will steer it left to right or starboard to port. I'm actually going to hop on, if that's all right. It's very typical rowing in the way that the main rowing seat, where I'll spend most of my time on the water, will be here, going back and forward, looking at absolutely nothing but blue sky and blue water. That said, I'm very much looking forward to it. If I show you some of the pieces of kit, let's start off with some of the boy toys. We've got 2 knives like this, which will be responsible for cutting any ropes that get tangled, or perhaps if we have to deploy the life raft in a very rare situation, that will be used to cut away the rope that's attached to the boat with. Here we have our EPIRB. I'm talking a lot about the emergency equipment, which is quite amusing because hopefully we won't have to use this. But this is our EPIRB. This is an incredible piece of kit which sends a signal up to a satellite and then to Falmouth, and they'll hopefully coordinate a rescue, but hopefully we're not going to have to use that. Here is where Luke and I, when we're not rowing here, will be spending pretty much all of our time. This cabin is 6'4" long and maybe 4 foot wide. And no doubt when the going gets really tough and the waves or the storms start hitting us, Luke and I will both be, I don't want to say cowering, but we'll both be in there, shielding from the weather. It's completely watertight, which is absolutely necessary because if we capsize, then obviously we can't have any water compromisation. I hope that's a word. Here is our auto helm. This is perhaps one of the coolest pieces of kit we have. This will actually steer us. Gone are the days where a foot rudder was used off a compass bearing. Now, plus degrees, minus degrees. This is actually compass based as well. So once we align it with our next waypoint or our bearing, then this will automatically go back and forward, keeping us on our desired course. Another rowing position here for when Luke and I want to row, both of us together. We're hoping to do this perhaps 3 hours per day. So maybe if we do 15 hours in total, that way we'll just spend more time on the oars, hopefully increasing our speed and reducing our crossing time. And then in this hatch here, no sleeping will be done in here. It's bare at the moment because the kit's just sat over there, but this will house a huge amount of the kit, such as our power anchor assembly, which will be deployed during very rough weather if we decide that we can't row. It'll also have our drogues, which are similar to a power anchor in the way that they create drag, but we'll still be on the oars when we deploy those. And then we've actually got a very cool piece of kit. It's difficult for you to see from here, but in here we have an E4 fuel cell, which is another means with which to create power, along with our solar panels. And this fuel cell, when there's bad cloud cover, will enable us to keep creating energy. Not many teams have that, which is well, it's a pretty cool piece of kit, and we're glad that we have it. It'll also mean that we won't have to be as meager as other teams with our power consumption. And then, if I show you quickly one of these hatches, this is where we'll be keeping our food. This is one day's food rations. You can tell this is Luke's because it's appallingly vacuum packed. But here we have perhaps 4,000 to 5,000 calories, varying between dehydrated meals that we'll add desalinated water to rehydrate, and then our snack packs. Today, or this day, Luke will have nuts. He'll have a giant bar apple, and I'm sure he's got some fruit pastels or some fatty food somewhere. Luke loves the fatty foods. And that's pretty much a roundup of our ocean rowing boat. I thought it would have been wrong of me to not show you the internal cabin electronics, but here we have pretty much a panel that can basically run this ocean rowing boat. As we'll be spending, you know, maybe 8 to 10 hours a day each, Luke and I at different times in here, it's important that we know how to use all this equipment. Here we have our Hybrid Touch Raymarine. This is basically our electronic chart. It will give us our global positioning. As well as this, we can see where our waypoints are and exactly how well we've done mileage and time-wise every day. This is one of the key pieces of kit. Here we have our VHF radio. It's probably in all the movie scenes that you've seen someone on a radio like this. Channel 16 is where we'll stick at. And so if anyone comes into range, because VHF radio works very much of range, then an alarm will come up and it'll say, hello Maple Leaf, or Tracy, whatever name we decide, please chant to channel 27 or 37, and then we'll switch that and we'll have our conversation. If we move on to the electronics of the fuel cell, the machine itself is up in the forward cabin, but this is where we run it all. It tells us how we're doing fuel, because it runs off fuel and battery wise. This is actually the big red button that everyone loves. This shows that our batteries, we're using 1 and 2. If I turn it here, we're just using battery 1. If I turn it here, I've now turned all the electronics on the boat off. Only in the occasion or in the scenario that we have to manage our battery power because there's an issue, we have 2 batteries, then we'll use 1 or 2. On top of here, we have our solar panels, which they'll be most effective during the hottest part of the day when the sun is above us, between 12 and 3 o'clock. It's during those periods of times that will actually run our water maker, which basically saps most of the energy out of all the systems on board. We'll make all our water for Luke and I, which will be about 30 litres a day for drinking and rehydrating food. We'll make that all at one time. And then if I take you lastly onto our switchboards, here we have our autopilot compass light, which we'll have on, well, the compass light is on all the time, but our nav lights, for instance, will only be turned on at night. There are 2 green and red lights that are right at the forward front of the boat. Then we have our GPS, our navigation, our VHF radio. Basically, all the systems on the boat are controlled by these 2 panels here. We have one battery here, and the other battery here. And our water maker, which is a pretty large piece of kit, perhaps that wide, is actually sat underneath these cushions here. Hopefully we won't have to access it to do any work, but if we do, we're pretty confident that we can maintain and basically mend any of the equipment if it goes wrong. And that's our cabin mechanics. A challenge like the one that we're taking on, rowing the Atlantic, it takes a huge amount of money and the costs are quite substantial. So I'd just like to say a massive thank you on behalf of 2 Boys in a Boat for Reed, who are one of our primary sponsors, Doddington Farm Shop and Cafe, Duncan and Topless, the Lincolnshire-based accountants, The Tab, which is a university online publication, Infotex, who have very kindly built our website. They're the guys that did Ranulph Fiennes' The Coldest Journey. Bespoke Foods, who have provided us with a lot of special treats. And on this side of the boat, the Lincolnshire-based solicitors Langley's. Big thank you to them, and to, of course, Amy at Amy Claridge PR, who's been absolutely instrumental in putting forward our campaign to the public. So a big thank you to all of them. A big thank you from Jamie, one of the 2 Boys in the Boat, to all the general public and our friends and family who have been supporting us throughout this adventure. With only 7 weeks to go now, we're really trying the last push for our fundraising. So please, if you haven't already done so, please donate to breast cancer care via our Just Giving link. Thank you very much.